Hello all and welcome to a brand new Parry Pickups. Thanks very much for joining us today. So we're back on the Kinect. We haven't had a Kinect game for a couple of weeks now, and now we've got two. And what's great about collecting Kinect games at the minute is they're so affordable. You can really just enjoy the back catalogue without spending too much money. So I handpicked these couple of games which I was very interested in trying out. Firstly, we gave this one a go. This is Rabbids. What's it called again? Alive and Kicking. So this is a collection of mini-games. Familiar territory for the Rabbids, but this time all the mini-games use the Kinect. So what you get is a sort of like an iToy play type setup, but with some quite ingenious mini-games and some not so ingenious mini-games. It's such a mixed bag. There's some really fun ones on here. For example, spraying a hose of green gunk into the snorkels of Rabbids, where you have to pump the pumper, shall I say, and spray the Rabbids. Stepping on the Rabbids is as obvious as it sounds. Though, you know, you see your living room on the screen and you step on them. There's a really inventive Lemmings type game, which reminds me of the iToy integration into Lemmings actually, where you have to use your various body parts to hit certain switches to make sure the Rabbids get to their goal without falling into any of the hazards. So it's nice to see a homage to that. There's a wonderful one where there's a blow up beach guy, what we call them, you know, the big buff guys on the beach, and basically you have to kind of just do the pose that he's got, you know, so repeat the pose, which is really cool, and as you do it, there's certain elements of the character will expand and inflate, and that's another fun one. Also a fun one is the bathroom shadow game, where you see shadows behind a shower curtain, and your job is to replicate that shadow, and there can be some very funny sort of shapes, for example like a crocodile or something, so you can basically just see your silhouette on screen. You have to move your way into that shape. There's a great one where you get shrunk really tiny and put inside a rabbit, and then you have to do like it's a slalom type game where you sit crouched down, you can see a little representation of yourself on the screen, and you move from left to right like this. So those games are great. Then you've got other games which like are very short. You know, some games in this are long and some are short, and some of the short ones are like how many cows. You just have to point, wave your hand, and then say how many you think there were. That, you know, there's games which you think just they shouldn't have bothered with, to be honest. But it really is quite a fun game, apart from the odd lackluster mini game on here. It's always a problem with mini games. You know, you can think of so many good ones, but then you pad it out with the not so good ones. So this cost me just £3, I think, from CX actually. So you know, if you're looking for Kinect games, then pop into CX and see what they've got available. I got Disney Fantasia for 50p. If you've seen the previous episode, you heard my thoughts on that. It's a fantastic rhythm game. So. Yeah, big fan of the Kinect. These ones are like brand new. I'd say these ones because we have another one, and this one is Kinect Sports Season 2. So, what sports do you get in this one? You get American football, skiing, baseball, darts, golf and tennis. You get variations on those sports. So there's a couple versions of darts, a couple versions of tennis. One is the traditional sport, the other is more a fancy version of it. For example, with the darts it's popping balloons. For the golf, it's a sort of like monkey target thing where there's an area which you hit the ball into, and depending on where you land, that you get so many points. Yeah, baseball, regular baseball, you got home run kind of mode. Skiing, there's a slalom, and there's something else. We didn't get to try the other variation on skiing, but I'll just quickly run through and tell you which ones are good fun and which ones are a bit awkward. American football, I'm not familiar with the sport, so I don't really get it even in this. You do your shouting out parts, and you do your kicking and your throwing and crouching, and no, I'm not really into that, unfortunately. Skiing is good. It's quite sensitive, but that's okay. You know, you just have to move your whole body. You can't kind of hold back with the skiing. But when you get into skiing, it's actually a lot of fun. Baseball I found tricky, but I think once you get the hang of it, baseball could also be quite a fun one. Darts is an odd one because if you just play it like naturally, which is what you find when you first put this game in, it's very well done. And quite intuitive actually. If you were just to jump into one of the games, you kind of would just do the natural movements you normally do, which is what you do when you go into darts. But how it seems to work is you pull back to sort of lock onto an area, and once you're locked on, you just make the movement forward. But it seems like within that time, when you move forward, you can very easily miss. So it looks like it's locking on, but it's not locking on. So I think the darts requires a bit more practice to get good at that one. Golf you'd think would work perfectly well, and initially it does, but then I found in the smaller space I was using, because of course any Kinect game you need as much space as possible, and I'm probably playing this in by comparison to what they expect, a very small room. I can just about get enough room to play them. So golf, I could not work out how to aim, but I could do the swing fine. That worked pretty well. So I think maybe I could have done with spending a little bit of time in the tutorial mode of this to work out these little intricacies of the game. But tennis is actually pretty impressive. You can do the whole motion of throwing up the ball to serve and hitting it with the racket, and that seems incredibly intuitive actually, the tennis. That just like Wii Sports, that's one you can just jump into right away, and that actually works pretty well. So plenty of voice recognition options in this as well. There's actually outlined a little bit of that in the instruction book. I'll just have a quick reminder for myself. So when you're doing the American football, I'll show you that. That's some of the commands you can do. You can say things like ready, hike, skiing, let's go, change batter, change pitcher, pitcher change for baseball. You can say objection in tennis, suggestion on, suggestion off for darts, change club, practice, take shot. So yeah, it does there's a heavy emphasis on the voice commands too. So I think from what I remember of Kinect Sports, it takes things to the next level, but it doesn't feature all the sports that are in Kinect Sports, the original. It's not like Wii Sports Resort in that respect. You have to get both in order to get the full package. So it even advertises Kinect Sports 1 in here and says if you want to play football, bowling, boxing, beach volleyball, table tennis and track and field, then you're going to have to pick that game up as well. But lucky for me, I can't imagine Kinect Sports 1's going to cost a lot of money. This costs just £4, so I imagine Kinect Sports, the original, is also slightly cheaper. So that is on my list of Kinect games to get next. And then rounding out this video a little bit, two games unfortunately I can't capture gameplay footage for, but I'll try and do something a little bit different with them, so at least they are interesting for you to hear about. Actually, I'll start off. Don't know if you got a glimpse of that. Start off with this one. I'm a big fan of Evangelion. I mentioned the N64 game in a previous episode. This is called Second Impression. Now, I was curious about this game initially when I first got my Japanese Saturn years and years ago, but quickly realised that it was a sort of like a text adventure based game, and well, when it's in Japanese, those sort of games aren't much fun. However, I found this cheap enough for just a couple of quid and thought, well, I'd like to add that to the collection. So I did, and it is exactly that. You play as Shinji, of course, the main character, and I think there's a new girl started at school, and it's all about making friends with that girl in the midst of another angel attack. So the enemies in Evangelion are called angels, if you're not familiar, and there's an attack going on at the same time as this unique storyline. So far, upon playing it a little bit, everything I saw was repeat footage, not original footage from the anime. So there's got to be some new bits of animation in this, but I've not encountered them yet. Presentation's okay, but the next game I'm going to talk about, which is also Evangelion, I'd say that they definitely improved on it. In this set you get a game and a soundtrack. I'll show you these in more detail. So in the back you get the CD, which is on a smaller disc. Those very familiar with the GameCube will recognise this size disc. It is just a CD, audio CD that you can play on your CD player. It's got about 4 or 5 tracks on there. It's quite nice thing to have, especially when the game's only £2. I think I paid for it. Then it's worth it for that, and also these cards that you get as well. You get a selection of cards. I think 3. Yep, that's right. It's 3 cards, and they feature some of the characters, the original character for the game, Mayumi Yamagishi, Rei Ayanami, and the unique angel villain that appears in this game. So it's an okay package for what I paid for it. Unfortunately, the game itself it's not very playable for me personally, and that's why I've avoided it up until this point. But it's a nice thing to add to the collection. And being a fan of Evangelion, I'm quite happy to have it. And the next Evangelion game is called, it's called Iron Maiden or Steel Princess, or something like that, I think. It's actually translated Iron Maiden on here, on the case, but it does go under some different names. There's a sequel to this on the PS2. There's also a remake of this, I think also on PS2 and PSP. And so it's quite an important Evangelion game, just because it seems to have quite a fan following. So now this is another story about a new girl in school, and Shinji's associating with her, getting to know her. There seems to be a trend of these games for things like that to happen. Presentation this time is a lot nicer from what I've played of this. It all seems a little bit more interactive actually. You have a few more options of things you can do. The animation is done with sprites as opposed to FMV for the most part. So that's pretty nice. It looks better on the whole using that style. And in the case, you don't get too many fancy things with this one, unlike the other. But you do get a nice instruction booklet, as per usual. 2 discs. The game's quite long, from what I've heard anyway. And the usual gumph you get in these Japanese releases: spine cards and registration cards, and actually a little leaflet for some other Saturn games. So that is Evangelion Iron Maiden. Not its exact title by any means, but that is what we'll refer to it as for this video. I'm sure if you search that on eBay, if you're interested, you'll be able to find a copy of this. It's again very cheap, a couple of quid, just as Second Impression was. So there we go. That's 4 new games, and that's the end of this episode of Parry's Pickups. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a bit different. 2 hardly playable import Saturn games and 2 Kinect games. So don't know how many people care about these particular games, but if you are a Kinect fan, do let me know in the comments below. If you also collect import Saturn, that will also be interesting to me. Would you go as far as buying games you couldn't necessarily play if you were a fan of the franchise, which, you know, it's certainly a situation where I've done just that. For me, it's if the price is right, I will not go out of my way to buy an expensive game that I can't play. And that's it. While you're here, if you're not already subscribed and you like the video, you can subscribe quite easily, and also like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and leave some comments below. So thanks again, and we'll see you again very soon for another Parry's Pickups. Bye for now.